Now, as many of y'all know, I'm a huge fan of the Obi Wan Kenobi series. I wasn't too keen on maybe some of the Inquisitors, but I really enjoyed the Obi Wan Kenobi series. I thought they had a awesome way to tell Obi Wan Kenobi's story between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So I was desperately hoping they would have come out with the second season and maybe delved into some of the legends of Obi Wan Kenobi, where he fought Chrysanthus, Black Chrysanthemum, and Jabba, or the rogue Jedi who was a sand person or a Tusken warrior. And I was pretty upset when they came out with the DVD saying the complete series of Obi Wan Kenobi. I would go back and I would use Ewan McGregor as Obi Wan Kenobi and add those series in there. I mean, there's so much to do with Obi Wan Kenobi, and I think that the first season kind of disappointed some people due to the way that they their direction was in how they made the show. I liked it. I was excited to see every episode, and I was not disappointed when it ended, and I wanted more. I thought that the scene with Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, when they, spoiler alert, when they fought each other, and Obi-Wan was so emotional, he was trying to reach out to Anakin when Darth Vader had the busted helmet. I know they did that in Ahsoka too, but for me, seeing it live action was kind of emotional for me. Seeing Obi-Wan, pouring out his heart to Anakin, and he's how he was saying he was sorry and all these other things.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Anakin. For all of it.
I think that kind of removed that monkey off of Obi-Wan's back, because he felt guilty that whole time. And that kind of released him from that guilt. Anyway, all that to say, there's an article out on StarWarsNews.net and said George Lucas was a fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi and even consulted on it, says Pablo Hidalgo. So I want to go over this and read this with you for you Obi-Wan fans. And even if you're not an Obi-Wan fan, you might find it interesting because it talks about some of the other Star Wars movies that George Lucas got to view and watch, and what he told people how he either liked it or didn't like it. So there's Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fighting. It says George Lucas was a fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi and consulted on it, says Pablo Hidalgo. Pablo Hidalgo was a guest on this year's edition of Podathon, a fundraiser for Make-A-Wish hosted on May the 4th, and dropped some interesting nuggets regarding the Star Wars franchise and some of the recent projects. Perhaps the most interesting quote to emerge from it, and which has been making the rounds over the past few days, is when he discussed Obi-Wan Kenobi and George Lucas's reaction to it. And I think Kathleen Kennedy should listen to this and not do her own thing and listen to George and the people. He said, early on, there was a conversation had with George about what his thoughts were and whether or not he bought the whole concept of taking Obi-Wan and Vader again, and he was 100% supportive. And I've heard tell that it's been one of his favorite things to come out of Star Wars, because he recognizes so much of what he did in the prequels, basically brought forward and celebrated in a way that I'm sure surprised him. And it's one of my favorites. I mean, I like The Mandalorian Season 1 and this one. These are my favorites. Besides his own thoughts about the series, perhaps the most interesting part about the quote is the fact that he was very receptive to the idea that Obi-Wan and Vader had fought once between the events of Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. And she's not a bad actress, but I did not like her role as one of the Inquisitors. She did not grab me, and I think that the direction that they took with her, trying to make her such a huge part of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, really threw me off. That's the only part of the series I did not like. because this is supposed to be an Obi Wan Kenobi series, not an Inquisitor series. And if you want to make an Inquisitor series, I'd probably watch it, and I think it'd be interesting, where they go around hunting Jedi. But don't make this, half Obi Wan, half Inquisitor series. Behind the scenes, Lucas hasn't exactly shied away from sharing his thoughts on the latest Star Wars project. While we haven't heard him directly on record say anything about them, Bob Iger did share the maker's feelings of disappointment after watching The Force Awakens in his book. Just prior to the global release, Kathy screened The Force Awakens for George. He didn't hide his disappointment. There's nothing new, he said. In each of the films in the original trilogy, it was important to him to present new worlds, new stories, new characters, and new technologies. In this one, he said, there aren't enough visual or technical leaps forward. J.J. Abrams also said how much he wished Lucas had liked his movie, but appreciated the time anyway. On the opposite side, Lucas apparently thought The Last Jedi was beautifully made, and he told as much to writer-director Rian Johnson. There is currently no record of his opinion on The Rise of Skywalker, and he didn't even attend the premiere of that movie. He was there for the previous 2 saga films, though. Oh my gosh. That's where me and George diverge. There's a divergence in the Force. That was the most horrid movie ever. And there he is. As far as spin-offs go, Lucas apparently loved Rogue One and let Tony Gilroy know during a 45-minute conversation after the maker saw the movie, the Andor showrunner revealed recently. Solo was directed by an old friend of his, Ron Howard, who said he was very supportive of the film. Which I liked the Solo movie. I know a lot of people didn't. I thought maybe Han Solo could have been more roguish, but it wasn't a bad movie to me. Not as bad as some of the sequels. He did come by and visit the set, which is a pretty rare thing, but he did it as a show of support, which was really cool. And he was really complimentary. But he was also really confident when I came in that I would get the feel of it and understand how to maximize the entertainment value of these characters in this world. Lucas has also seen The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, as we know from several quotes from Dave Filoni. While last year he didn't directly address his thoughts on the Rosario Dawson-led series, but he did mention Lucas' reaction to The Mandalorian back in 2020. He's been very complimentary. I think he's enjoyed the show, and he said once that now he gets to watch it as a fan and watch it as a viewer. While there isn't a direct quote about Andor, given Gilroy's involvement and the fact that he liked Rogue One, we could assume he was at least receptive to it. Prior to the Disney sale, Lucas was also developing a grittier show about the underground levels of Coruscant that, tone-wise, would probably have been as similar to the Rebellion-focused Disney Plus show. The second and final season will debut next year on Disney Plus. Lucas will receive an honorary Palme d'Or on May 25th at the Cannes Film Festival. So I think the reason that George Lucas was not liking The Force Awakens is that it was a mirror image of Star Wars, basically. Not only that, he had written out 7, 8, and 9, and he gave them to Kathleen Kennedy, and Kathleen Kennedy said she was going to do those movies. And I'm sure when he saw this, he's like, well, what is this? We'll probably never know what was in the scripts that George Lucas wrote. But what are your thoughts about this article? I know some people liked the sequels, and that's okay. You can like them. You're free to like them. Let me know what you think down below. And if you're really interested, you should check out this video. May the Force be with you always.